Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how you can draw fur using a marker base. Before we get into this tutorial though, if you want to follow this one and a load of other tutorials, then head on over to my Patreon page. I post real-time tutorials there with full voiceover so you can draw along or paint with me as we're going through so you can see the process. If you want to check out any of the materials that I've used, then they are listed in the description below, and if you follow the Jackson's Art links you can get 10% off your first order. So let's get straight into this, and this is a really common method that I see a lot of people using, and I often get asked whether I use a marker base for my pet portrait and wildlife work. So I thought I would do a short demonstration on how you can use a marker, an alcohol marker or any kind of marker, as your base layers and then layer your coloured pencil back over the top. So the markers that I'm using today are the Winsor & Pro marker. I'm using 3 different colours and I'm also using a blender. So for this fur I'm actually rendering another chocolate coloured fur. So the markers that I've got are sandstone, which is this nice sort of really grey kind of dark yellow colour. I then also have 2 brown colours. I have chocolate and then I have walnut, and I'm just layering those down first of all on my paper. So the paper that I'm using for this is the Strathmore Bristol Board 500 series in the smooth. So this is really great for adding markers to and this kind of media. Everything goes down really smooth and it covers the tooth of the paper really nicely. So if you're going to use a marker or some kind of pen to do your base layers and then add your coloured pencil over the top, I'd recommend using a smooth-ish paper just because it's easier to layer down your markers on this. So if you're using a watercolour paper, what I usually use is a Fabriano hot pressed watercolour paper. You want to make sure that it is hot pressed and smooth. You don't really want to use cold press, not surface, as that has quite a bit of tooth to it. So if you're wanting to try markers as a base, then I would recommend using a smooth paper. So once I've added my markers down, I am adding these in a way that I'm creating a highlight on the left hand side and then having my darker areas on the right hand side. So obviously I've put the lighter marker on the lighter area and then gradually got darker, and I've tried to use the blender just to blend it out. I'm not the best with markers and I'm not that technically skilled with using markers, so all I do is just layer the colours down and then I go back over with my pencil and help everything blend together, pull everything together so that you get a nice transition. So I've just layered down my markers, tried to blend them as much as I can, not to very much avail, and then all I have done is just let it dry for a little while. They don't really take that long to dry. I think I left mine for about 5 minutes, and then all I've done is just picked up my colour pencils and added them over the top. So this works in exactly the same way as the watercolour base. So if you want to see how I did the watercolour base and then added the pencil over top, I'll leave a link in the description and a card up above so you can see that. You can see the example of the circle next to this one. It works in exactly the same way as that you're adding a media other than pencil that is going to fill the tooth of the paper without actually diminishing the tooth and diminishing the fact that you can layer the pencils. So with the watercolour, what we did is added water and paint, and obviously you're not burnishing or blending, so it just flows into the tooth of the paper and then you can add everything back on top. And that's exactly the same with the markers. So you're not burnishing or blending with the markers, you're just adding the colour to the paper and it's just going into all of that tooth, and you're not having to use any pressure on it or anything to actually damage the paper. When it comes to adding your pencil layers and subsequent layers over the top, it becomes a lot easier. So your pencil goes over as if you had nothing down on the paper, when in fact you do have something down. You have these layers of markers. So this is really good because you don't have to add as many layers of pencil back over the top. I know a lot of people often comment that they don't actually like the burnishing or blending process because they have weak wrists, or they can't apply as much pressure to the pencil as they'd like to get the results that they like. This is a way that you can fill in the tooth of the paper and get those base colours down and those mid-tones, and then add further layers of pencil over the top without having to use too much pressure and actually adding too many layers as well. So once I've done the marker base, all I've done is then gone over with some sharp pencils. So I'm using the Polychromos pencils, and I'm also using the Caran d'Ache Luminance White pencil. So you can see that I've added the Luminance White in the lighter area of this circle. So I've just added small fur strokes going in the direction that I want the fur to go in, and just filled up the paper. So I've gone over that sandstone colour that I originally used as a base with the marker, and that's acting as my midtone. So you can see that the white has gone over, and you can still see that sandstone colour underneath, and that's acting as the midtone for that. So then as I gradually move towards the right hand side of the circle, I've just added fewer white hairs coming back, and then I've started to transition into my darker colours. So for this example, I've also used some burnt sienna, some walnut brown and some dark sepia. So I'm adding the walnut brown and the dark sepia more towards the right hand side, where obviously it's darker, and then I've added the burnt sienna as an additional mid-tone throughout the whole of the circle. So as we've gone back towards the right hand side, obviously the marker base has got darker, so it actually becomes harder to see the midtones anyway, so you don't necessarily have to add midtones to those darker areas because they're not going to show up. What I've done is just added a few sporadic hairs of the lighter tone, so of the Caran d'Ache Luminance White pencil, and also just added those darker pencils over there as well. To add texture and to get a nice hairy look for this, I've just gone over the entire thing with the Caran d'Ache Luminance White pencil, and you can add really nice texture this way. So this is similar to the watercolour base. You can just add white pencil and your light colours really easily over this, because obviously you've used the marker and it hasn't broken the tooth of the paper and it hasn't damaged the paper at all, so it's really easy to add those lighter colours back over the top. This works in exactly the same kind of way as you would use solvent as well, because when you're using solvent you're breaking down the pigment and binder and adding it to the paper without actually having to blend or burnish and damage the paper, and then you can add that white back over top really easily. So it works in exactly the same way as that. You're just putting down the markers first, so you're just really saturating your paper with the markers, adding that pigment down, usually adding the tones of your darker colours and your mid-tones, and then going back over with your light pencils. So that's the way that I like to work with markers as a base layer. Just treat it as if it was my darker colours and mid-tones, and then going over with some lighter pencils and just adding in some dark hairs here and there, obviously adding pencil back over the top, because I still want to treat it like it's a coloured pencil piece, but obviously you know that you've got that marker base. So hopefully you found this useful and can apply this to your work. I will be doing some more in-depth tutorials and things in the new year on using these different kind of bases and techniques. So make sure that you subscribe to my channel, hit that bell icon so you're notified of when those videos are released. I'd love to know if you guys use any other methods as base layers or anything when you're creating your fur. Leave them as a comment down below, and it may inspire me to create a tutorial or create an art topic to talk about with you guys. Don't forget to follow me on all of my social media sites. I'm on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!